of sports shows, updates, and interviews. The only way is the right way, I might say. Nobody doing it better, y'all some lightweights. Malik right, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles, got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. They came, they stayed, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick that, relax, the TWSN.
Shout out Young Swish.
For tuning in to of State of the Jungle with Malik Wright, presented by the Right Way Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host, as always, McPhillips. We've got Lolo in the building, and we've got Daniel Alameda, Jimmy on the 1 and 2 jam-packed show. A lot of stuff to get into. But before we do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys miss when we go live or upload content from the TWSN studios. Listen, man. Well, Rick is starting us off hot already. He says, Rick Barley says, song gets me in the mood to listen to the boys talk Bengals. Listen, man, I appreciate that. We've been getting a lot of love on the song recently. So shout out,
like the song, man.
Shout out independent artists. I don't even know if he's a rapper anymore, but Daniel's good friend Bannon Clark, Young BC. We appreciate you for coming through with the fire intro for us here. We're gonna be updating the intro here shortly, doing some more stuff, keeping the same song, but just as more experiences happen, we'll be doing more stuff like that in school. So me, Daniel, and one of our website manager at TWSN, Michael Hare, will be headed out to the Super Bowl. We leave this weekend, and we're pretty pumped up for that, pretty excited. TWSN, so we'll have a bunch of coverage. We'll have a bunch of coverage this upcoming week. From Super Bowl Radio Row. We'll see how many people we could talk to and how much food I could eat and devour and all that good stuff. But listen, guys, a lot of stuff to get into, a lot of stuff to get to talk about. I think where I want to start first, I was kind of debating in my head a little bit. Let's talk about Germaine, Pratt, and Geno Stone.
Going right for the tough ones.
Yeah, I'm going right for the tough ones, man. I want to talk about them because I feel like there is a thought process right now amongst the fan base that Germaine Pratt is already off the roster. I don't know if I see it that way. I understand people came out with articles and they talk about how, you know, the likelihood of Germaine Pratt being back is more likely he's gone than not. But I also feel like there's something to be said. His best year was under Al Golden as the linebackers coach. You wonder, will the familiarity, especially with being a new defensive coordinator, you're not going to just come in and rip up everything, right? You ideally would want to have pieces in place. So when you get rid of those guys, those pieces can sort of supplement the lost value you had with the experienced linebacker and a guy like, you know, Germaine Pratt. I think the Geno Stone thing is an interesting topic because obviously everybody's favorite safety in this draft class, Xavier Watts, coming out. Obviously, we know the relationship between him and new Bengals defensive coordinator Al Golden. One has to wonder, will Al Golden decide to really put his foot down and press the organization to acquire Xavier Watts because he knows the system, because he knows the scheme, because of the familiarity there. But I want to get your overall thoughts before we jump right into who are the potential replacements. Let's talk about those two in particular. And I'm going to let Evan start us off because Evan, you weren't here last week, were you?
I was here last week.
You were here
before
the
I
week
was
before
out.
you were last. You weren't. See, my mind's everywhere.
Still feeling your mess.
We're still
feeling
it's that. Yeah, it was just that void in your life just still hadn't been filled yet. That's all right. I'll talk a lot tonight. You'll be sick of me, and then you'll be like, "Damn, is he taking?"
I have a week of break. I have a week of break.
You do. You get one off. You get one off. I'll have to circle back around and get you next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. When I look at Germaine Pratt, I kind of agree the same way that you do. Where I think initially when we ran into the offseason, there was more of an expectation maybe that he was a more likely cut candidate. But when you do bring up that Al Golden, it was the linebackers coach during that time when he did have his kind of breakout year. And then also kind of that he may want some of these veterans on the defense, because if you are going to get rid of guys, whether that is, does Trey Hendrickson get the right number of right amount of money that he wants? Is that Does Mike Hilton end up leaving the defense? Okay, well, now you still got a bunch of guys on rookie contracts filling out your entire secondary between Jordan Battle, DJ Turner, Dax Hill, and Cam Taylor-Britt. So between all of that, he may want as many veterans as he can get back there. But there's also the argument that, hey, you could save about $6 million by cutting Germaine Pratt. And at this point, he's had the one really good year and a bunch of inconsistency thereafter. Do you pay $8 million for a guy who is kind of just a fill-in starter? Is that somewhere you can get cheap and say, hey, if we cut $6 million here, then suddenly we can pay $4 million to Dalton Risner and $4 million to another linebacker and still feel like between Logan Wilson, Akeem Davis-Gaither, and whoever Al Golden handpicks as a fit for what he wants to do, now suddenly you're talking about, okay, I could realistically see the expectation. So I think if you're gauging my initial reaction, it's really kind of 50-50. I can see the argument either way, and I see the way that the Bengals defense or the Bengals team overall can get better if they do move on from Germaine Pratt. I do think that they need to add a little bit of athleticism there at linebacker. Like it's just not been there. Let's put it that way. And then in the modern NFL right now, with everything you ask linebackers to do and all the stress that's put on them, I do think that is somewhere that maybe mid rounds of the draft, they add somebody, but also maybe like a cheap veteran free agent, the same way that I would see them approach guard.
Yeah. The thing that makes, I think, the linebacker situation as a whole pretty unique. Obviously, Al Golden come back, old linebackers coach, but Al Golden, uses more linebackers on the field more often than Lou does. So it's one of those things. It's like, yes, I think that makes so much sense to move on from Germaine Pratt from a production, price, allocation of resources standpoint. But then, when Al uses his 3 linebacker sets as frequently as he does, or here and there, so now you're talking about finding 2 starters. So I think that's kind of that gray area right now where it's like, yes, I think there's a lot of things pointing to why it makes sense to move on for Germaine from Pratt, but it's that awkwardness where we know now if he's gone, now we need potentially 2 starting caliber linebackers. Obviously one would still play more than the other, but he still goes to his 4-3. He still goes to his 4-3 looks from time to time, way more than Lou ever did. Obviously, there's no guarantee that necessarily translates to Cincinnati, but it's something he did at Notre Dame. And if that is the case, now you're looking at, again, making sure you add 2 quality linebackers. And linebacker similar. I don't want to say it's similar to running back to where it's like a little bit easier to find that production, but it just kind of is.
It is one of those spots that you can pick historically in the mid rounds and get a guy like guard, like D tackle.
Yeah. And, to the Bengals' luck, I think this linebacker class in the draft is pretty solid. There's some solid guys in free agency, nothing overwhelming in free agency, but still you don't need top end talent everywhere on your team. If you can, get some of those average or slightly above average players, reallocate some money elsewhere to improve the roster and still get about the same production at the linebacker position, that's great. That's a conversation you need to be having. But I think to me with Pratt, it's one of those, I don't think it's something we're going to just see early flat in the offseason. I think it easily could be one of those things. Okay, let's see if we can bring in a guy for cheap first. And let's see if this guy falls to us in the draft. And then, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see, because again, putting yourself in a position to where you have to replace another quality starter that is familiar with what Golden's going to do just could end up creating more issues than not. So I think if we do see a move with him, it'll kind of be, I don't want to say towards the later, but we'll kind of see the replacement before we see him leave. That's my thought.
Yeah. And just going off of, before we get to the safety talk, my opinion on this is I think it would be the smart move to address other positions first. When we talk about moving off a guy like Germaine Pratt, for me, that conversation doesn't even start if Sam Hubbard's still on the team. And that's for me, right? I think it is much easier to replace Sam Hubbard's production with what he's doing, whether it's with a Miles Murphy, with a Joseph Asai, with a draft pick, versus expecting somebody right away to come in and be your starting linebacker. And I understand the dollar amount. I completely understand that. And if they were to move on, the one guy I think that could have a very, very, very big role, and a guy I've personally been a fan of this year, was Shaka Hayward. I think that he's one of the guys. Obviously, he didn't get a lot of run this year. I think he played maybe two to three games at the end of the season. But that's where I would be looking, just because for me, I struggle to see, if you get rid of Germaine Pratt, who's going to be the immediate fix. And I think the smart move, in my opinion, would be just run it back with Germaine Pratt, Logan Wilson. And like I said, I like Shaka Hayward, and I would just really be focusing on the other positions versus getting rid of a guy that we know for a fact has familiarity with. The DC versus, that was his position coach, and that he had one of the best years of his career under there. So that's how I would look at it. Like I said, I really addressed it saying, I'm circling Shaka Hayward, and it may sound like a weird name. Why are you circling him? I think he's the guy that's going to have to take a jump regardless, because like Logan said, he does like to use 3 linebackers a lot more than what Lou typically did. And with Akeem Davis-Gaither being a free agent now, we're not sure if he's coming back or not. So, like I said, I think that's how I would personally address it. And I personally would keep Germaine Pratt, but that's me.
Yeah. Y'all all said a lot there. I think we all kind of agree with the same sentiment. I just think that there's a lot of knee-jerk reaction sometimes. Obviously, whenever there's change, we always kind of got our scissors out and we're looking to see who we can cut, right? But there has to be a contingency plan in place. If it's not a contingency plan in place, if it's not someone who you view as a significant upgrade, what are we doing? So I see people asking in the comment section, why not Jean Meta? I'll just say this: Jean Meta has proven to be, good on special teams. He's proven to be, good against the run. He's left a lot to be desired, I think, in the pass coverage game. And ideally, when you give someone a starting role, you'd hope that they'd be good at a little bit of both, and there wasn't such a big gap in that, in regards to his game. That's not to say Jean Meta can't develop into a very good linebacker for the Bengals. I just think that, it was a great preseason story, right? He looked good in spots this season, especially on special teams. I just think that it's a large role to go from feel good story, special teams guy to significant starter, right? And replacing a guy like Germaine Pratt. I understand Germaine Pratt left a lot to be desired, but I don't think that Jean Meta at this point of his career is better than Germaine Pratt. And I think that if you're moving on from Germaine Pratt, you ideally want to have somebody in a role that you believe, can at some point overtake those snaps and produce at a very high level. Evan, I saw your face there. Like, yes,
hear me out. Here's a fun name. We're gonna start doing this because it's free agency and draft time. So here's a fun name for you. How about you take the $8 million cap hit, $6 million cash that you're going to give to Germaine Pratt and give that to Dre Greenlaw instead?
I like that. I've always liked Dre Greenlaw.
I think Dre Greenlaw.
I think
so you're going to get a discount because he's coming off a year removed from the Achilles. So he's going to be. But that's the thing is you're not getting him the year after the Achilles. You're getting him the season after that recovery time,
which
right?
is when they typically
right.
Back.
And he's not older. He's not 29 or 30. He's 27 right now. So you're 27. You're over a year removed coming back from the Achilles. Your market's going to be down a little bit from that. Why not take that money? Why not give it to him and have him play next to Logan Wilson and give a guy who's excelled in coverage? We've spent the 5 years hoping for that one magic replication of Germaine Pratt in coverage year or more Logan Wilson interceptions. Give me Dre Greenlaw. Give me Al Golden. Let them work. I like the middle of that defense a lot better now all of a sudden.
There you go.
I like that.
You say you got to have a guy in mind. I got a guy in mind.
There's been a while since you've cooked like that.
I like Dre Greenlaw. He was a big part of the Madden franchises that I was building there for a while. So he's got a special place in my heart.
And you talk about a guy with the smarts. He played next to Fred Warner.
And he's definitely gone. That's the one thing.
Oh yeah.
Their defense, they're in a transition period at this point now. They're gonna have to remake a lot of different parts of their roster, the way they're constructed right now and the way their money's allocated.
I like that a lot. I like Dre Greenlaw, and that's a name that kind of slipped my mind because right now when we're thinking about fixing the defense, for me, it's like my mind immediately goes to defensive line right now.
Oh yeah,
it immediately goes to defensive line.
But that's the kind of bargain you're gonna have to find at guard, at linebacker, at I don't want to say safety because I've
been there.
Right. And I also, Javon Holland is a guy you've brought up and a guy I've been a really big fan of since he came into the league. And I feel like particularly with the secondary, I brought it up earlier. If Mike Hilton, let's say you keep Trey Hendrickson, I don't think you can keep Mike Hilton too. I don't think they're going to give 2 guys over the age of 30 on the defense.
I think Mike Hilton's gone.
That's the thing, right? Two guys over the age of 30 on the defense, and you're looking to spend to get better. Do we feel like Mike Hilton is going to be better this year than last year or the year before? I don't think so. He's going to be at or near or just below that level, and that we don't need to bring that back right now. But you just have so much youth at corner, at safety. If Jordan Battle's going to be filling that other kind of safety spot, you could really, really benefit from having some veteran experience and just a stud in the back there.
And he's played in big time games, too.
Right. To kind of be that Jesse Bates captain of the secondary, if you're going to have this front that can't really get pressure. Now, obviously, you want to get maybe a high draft pick at edge, maybe a high draft pick at D tackle, maybe both, right? But you don't know what those contributions are going to look like year one. So you can't count on necessarily that pass rush to be there to help out the secondary. So instead, make the back seven a strength.
I like that idea. You cooked right now, man. I'm proud of
I'm
you.
out here spitballing, man. We got a lot of time to figure stuff out,
You're cooking right now. Let's get on to the next topic that I want to touch on. Duke Tobin's comments, obviously. It's what everyone is up in arms about right now. And I felt like I was just sitting back with like the frog meme, drinking his tea, just watching the world burn. That's pretty much what was happening today. I think I have my thoughts. I want to get you guys' overall thoughts on it. Daniel, I want to start with you.
Yeah, my thoughts on this is this is what you're going to get. And my frustration, and I see what people are saying, right? I understand where the frustration comes. And the frustration comes from, look at other teams. Other teams have been very adamant in certain moments. Hey, that is our guy. We are going to do whatever it takes to re-sign him. And they make it happen. Some organizations aren't just coach speak, right? You got organizations that clearly say, this is our guy. No matter what, we're going to do what it takes. And I feel like that's the part the Bengals fans are frustrated about, saying, hey, well, Trey Hendrickson is the guy, and you should do whatever it takes to go out there and sign him. And I agree with that. I agree with that sentiment. I put myself in, try to put myself in the shoes of, okay, what if I was in Duke Tobin's shoes? What would I say? And I personally would make it my effort to say, we're going to re-sign him no matter what. But I can also see from the other side of it, right? You have to see from their side of, hey, you've got to pay T. Higgins. You've got to pay Jamar Chase. And is it smart? What does Trey Hendrickson want, right? That's a conversation that only they know. Does he want a 4-year contract? Does he want a 3-year contract? So I think that they're in a spot where Duke Tobin, especially for a guy who doesn't say anything throughout the season, we don't hear from Duke Tobin. So for the first thing that Bengals fans to hear is, we know that Trey Hendrickson has earned the right to the contract. We'll see what happens. That's where it's frustrating. You're not going out there, and this has kind of been his MO. This has kind of been the front office's MO, whether it was at the combine, talking about how are we going to adjust the offensive line, whether it was about T. Higgins, both, the past 2 years. That's how he's operated. That's how they've operated, saying, hey, we value this guy. We'll see what happens. And like I said, that's where I'm kind of frustrated. The same thing, Jamar Chase. I'm sure we all thought Jamar should have been paid last offseason. Now you're at a spot where you have to pay him this offseason. So I'm frustrated, but I'm not up in arms because this is what has happened. And there is no end all be all yet, right? Trey Hendrickson is still on the Cincinnati Bengals. The T. Higgins situation has not been resolved yet. So I'm going about it, hoping and giving them the benefit of the doubt. Hey, you're going to get the
breaking news real quick. I'm sorry. Press Taylor
I saw that.
is the Bears passing game coordinator. So he is not a member of the Cincinnati Bengals. I just wanted to say that.
Bullet dodged.
I just wanted to,
Ben Johnson, bringing him onto staff.
Yeah, that's
I
An
really
interesting
thought,
choice.
I really believe Press Taylor was going to find his way to Cincinnati. I'm happy to hear that that's not the case.
Wow.
But continue. I'm sorry.
No, I'm
you're
happy to
good.
hear he's gotten such a great opportunity.
He's got a great
elsewhere.
opportunity. He's going to
yeah,
say,
great.
oh,
Yeah,
and he's going to do a great job.
Great opportunity to work with a young quarterback. Yeah, of course, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how
He's gonna do great there.
I'm curious how Ben does. I mean, Ben hired a 28-year-old as his OC. I mean, we'll see. He's either going to be a genius or it's going to look like a flop. And I'm excited to see how that happens. But like I said, I understand the frustration. For me, it's just kind of a wait and see approach. If you also put yourself in the player's shoes, I would be pissed off. If I was Trey Hendrickson, I would be, right?
Wow.
I would be. If you're the GM of your team isn't making you, saying, hey, we're going to get this deal done. Would you not be, you wouldn't be upset?
Here's the thing. He signed a contract.
Yes.
He is still in the contract time, right? it is now the last year of his contract, so it is
Yes.
time to start talking extensions, right?
Yeah.
How can you be mad with Duke Tobin right now because he wasn't going to give you an early extension 1 year after you just signed an extension, right?
Yes, I'm with you
Okay.
on last offseason. Totally.
Right.
I thought last
Now
offseason
it's time for this
yes.
conversation.
Yes.
Do you feel he deserves to be paid like a top 3 edge at 30 years old? Because
Is
that
that
is the problem.
Is that what he's asking?
He's 30.
What is he asking?
Well,
though?
But that's the
That's a
question. We don't
comment.
know.
That
This
was
is
a
the same
comment.
thing with T. Higgins. Is T. Higgins asking for 30 million? I don't know. Maybe. Because, like, yeah, if it was Michael Pittman money and he said no, like, okay. But, like, yeah, absolutely. Trey is at around 20 million average value.
Yeah.
Some of the top guys are close to 28, and the recent ones have gotten just around 30.
Yeah.
But you're not going to give that guy. Absolutely, he was borderline defensive player of the year, if not was defensive player of the year, right? Are you expecting that same level of production next year or the year after? Because this is what you're paying for
Yep.
with the contract.
Mhm.
Absolutely, he deserves a raise.
Yeah.
Absolutely, he should get 20, 25% more tacked on. Instead of 20, be 24, 25 million.
Yes.
But edge rushers in their prime get top of market money. Edge rushers at 30, 31, going into their 31 season don't.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack is not getting that. And Khalil Mack was at a higher level in both facets of the game as a rusher and a pass rusher and a run defender than Trey Hendrickson was. And even Khalil Mack going into this offseason right now is getting closer to 2022 right now.
1,000%.
So that's where I'm kind of like, absolutely, Trey's an exceptional player. He should be brought back. He deserves to get more money. But how much are we talking? Because if it's 28, 30, then like I'm out.
Completely. And I think that's where the Bengals, and it could be Duke could be playing this smart. You could look at this the same thing, the T. Higgins deal, right? If this wouldn't have played out the way it did at the end of the season with Joe Burrow saying, hey, we're going to make this happen, with T. Higgins switching his agent, maybe this T. Higgins situation has gone differently, right? Maybe heading into this offseason, it's not likely that he's getting re-signed if he stayed with the same agent. So I can understand from the Duke Tobin aspect, hey, he is covering his ass. If Trey Hendrickson and T. Higgins, if they want crazy amount of money, I'm totally with you. I just think it would be a major problem if they do not re-sign at least one of those two. And you just hope that Trey Hendrickson is not asking for 30 plus million, because I think that would be ridiculous.
Logan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna kind of say, like, Duke's just kind of put himself in an awkward spot. The last couple of years are saying it's a priority to get Jamar Chase done. It's a priority to do this. We're gonna do that, and then not doing it. So now they probably don't feel like they can come out and say, hey, we're going to do this for Trey. And then if they don't do it, then they just keep looking worse and worse and worse. And, I think that, for the most part, like, he said a lot of things that are just true. He said he deserved a raise. He said he knew that. He said, all these things, he deserves a new contract and this and stuff. It's not like he's like, I don't know if he's really that good. I don't really know if he's, that kind of player. He acknowledged all those things. It's just, the way the Bengals are, and I know we all love Trey, but like Evan said, like, Trey's probably looking in for a contract to ride off into the sunset with at this point. That's what he should be wanting.
Probably cares more about guarantees than like
Than
an
anything.
annual average value.
As
That's
he
probably
should,
right.
as he totally undoubtedly should. But that doesn't mean the Bengals, are going to cater 100% to that way. And that doesn't mean it's a smart thing. Yes, we all want Trey here. And I'm not saying we shouldn't adjust and we shouldn't bring him back in any regard. But, at this point in the offseason, it's not, hey, I'm going to shoot low right now. They're probably shooting for top of the barrel. They're shooting for, top 5, 6, 7 edge money, to 3, 4, 5-year deals to be here forever. And like I said, just right off into the sunset. That's not smart. That's not something the Bengals should do. That's just also what we're assuming he's asking, because it's that early in the offseason. If Trey Hendrickson is asking to be paid $24 million, it's a completely different story.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing, because I see some people bringing it up in the comments to where, again, we talked about you are the edge coming off of your rookie contract or into your 5th, 6th year or second contract when you're 27 or 28, if you were early getting out of the draft and getting to free agency. You're talking about the only guys making an average of 34 million or over 30 are Nick Bosa, who signed it at his age 26 season, I believe. And then Josh Hines-Allen, 28, signed it over a year ago. So he was 27. Again, Brian Burns, 27. They're making 28, both of them. That's the second and third cap hit right there.
Yeah.
Like, the existing contract for Myles Garrett right now has him at 25 million a year. Like, he's 30. That's where you're at. Daniil Hunter, 31, 24 million a year. Montez Sweat, 29, 24 million a year. Like, that's the range he's at. Bradley Chubb, 29, 22 million a year. Like, so again, I'm saying if he's asking for 28 and 30, like these top guys who are 27 years old and were the young upcoming edge rushers, like, yeah, that's not really realistic to get for your third contract, or I guess
It's not
fourth if you're
smart
talking about
business
your
for us
extension,
either.
right? Like, as much as I love him, like it baffles me that we're like, oh gosh, like, are we going to be able to pay Jamar Chase $30 million a year and like still build a team? And then they were like, blank check for Trey Hendrickson, and I'm like, one guy just got the Triple Crown's 25 years old, and the other dude's 30, like going on 31. Like, I understand he is a really talented player. I'm just saying, top 2 edge money for like 27-year-olds is not what you give Trey Hendrickson right now. It's not what you give a lot of edge rushers right now that are in their 30s.
What I'll say, and I feel like the dialogue here is, it's fascinating. But I'll say this: I think that you have to pay Trey Hendrickson. This is my thoughts. How much is going to be the big question here?
Big one.
But he undoubtedly should not. I don't view Trey Hendrickson as expendable personally. That's just me. And there's a little bit of a method to my madness here. I think Cincinnati has to build up some goodwill with their players. They got to do a better job of retaining the players that have produced high production for them. It's something that they've really struggled with, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, certain players that you let walk out here at us next to why they're no longer here. Guys like DJ Reader, there's the injury concern, right? Then there's guys like Jesse Bates. You said, oh, well, his agent was unwilling to play ball with us, and he was asking for highest paid safety in the league money, right? Then you have Chidobe Awuzie, who's coming off of the ACL injury. Those are all valid guys to move off of. Larry Okunjobi, he thought he was getting a big deal with the Chicago Bears. They failed him for his physically unable to perform with his foot injury. Try to come back to Cincinnati. You allocated those dollars to BJ Hill instead of Larry Okunjobi. If the Bengals could go back and do it, they probably would choose Larry Okunjobi over BJ Hill. When you look at it, though, I'm talking strictly on the defensive side of the ball right now. Who has the Bengals outside of the name Joe Burrow, right? Who has the Bengals built up good faith, goodwill with, and they've produced at a high level, and the Bengals have signed and they've kept? I think that there's something to be said about a high producing player like Trey Hendrickson. The fact of the matter is, there is no one walking through those doors that are going to immediately just produce the way Trey did. And there's no one right now actively in the roster who has shown us that they could turn into that said player. Here's my biggest fear, guys. My biggest fear is that the Bengals are going to go into the draft an edge rusher and say, you know what, Trey, we appreciate everything you did. You're going to let you play out this final year on your deal. We try to negotiate with you at our price range of what we want. But we're going to move forward with this young player. And I feel like this young player might be thrusted into a spot and expected to produce like a Trey Hendrickson, kind of similar to a Dax Hill when it came to the Jesse Bates situation. I really hope that they learn from those mistakes. Now, hear me out. I think that I feel like there is a road where the two sides can meet. And it's a number that these two sides can meet at. And I could tell you from talking with Trey Hendrickson, meeting him, he doesn't seem like a greedy guy. It's not like, I don't think he's asking for to be the top paid pass rusher in the league or anything like that. I just think he more so wants, I think he sees the numbers, 57 sacks in 4 years, right?
100%.
That you divide that's about, he's averaging almost 15 sacks a season.
I think he would take less like overall money again for guaranteed money. Like that would be a big
and
thing
this goes back to our initial point, right, Ev? The Bengals have to change the way that they do business.
Exactly.
Because players are looking at it like, holy shit, I'm signing here in Cincinnati, right? I'm getting guaranteed money up front, but after that year, there's no more guaranteed money, significant guaranteed money. So what happens if I put together elite numbers? Could you imagine if Jamar Chase, and this is the game that we're in, this is the league that we're in. Could you imagine if Jamar Chase put up the numbers that he put up this season, Triple Crown receiver, signed for what he signed for with the Bengals, and the Bengals got him at a bargain deal, and they're like, yeah, we got you at a bargain deal. But that's how contracts work.
That's the risk you're taking.
You don't get to go back and say, hey, I performed elite. Let's rework my contract because I exceeded expectations. You don't get the chance to do that. You don't get the opportunity to do that. So the Bengals are going to be forced in a situation, not only with Jamar Chase, but quite possibly with players moving forward where you might have to change the way that you operate from a guaranteed money standpoint. You might have to. And that's where I'm at. Trey Hendrickson's situation is going to play itself out. It's going to be what it's going to be. But I think that this is us looking at the Bengals and saying fundamentally, I think players are realizing, and I think that's where Trey Hendrickson fell. Trey Hendrickson saw the numbers he was putting up, and he's like, you know what? There's no more guarantees beyond year one. It's not like the Bengals did me wrong, but if I'm playing at this elite level, why aren't there guarantees?
That's the thing, though. I think they could give him like an extension, but again, it comes back to the guaranteed money because if they don't have more guaranteed past year one, let's say people were asking about a contract extension, like what would you do? Okay, let's say you do a 2-year extension. So he has this year,
which is very probably what the Bengals would do.
So he gets this year plus 2 more, right?
Yeah.
So 3 years total. Let's say you give him $24 million a year, right? We put him at the same number that all the other guys are. That's a 20% raise, right? Okay, cool. So you end up at $24 million a year for the next 2 years. Let's just take $6 million off the last year because he's going to be older and maybe you want to cut him, right? So $18 million that year. We tack it on to this year. Okay, now you're at $21 million. Let's take $2 million off this other year. Well, and now that's $20 million. And now we have 23 for this year. So his cap hits now are 23, 20, and 18 for the next 3 years. I think he's fine with that. I think they're fine with that. But the problem is, I don't think they give him more guarantees past that first year. And that is the issue because I think they guarantee 12 or 15 million of that 24 in the first year. But I think they look at him with his age, with his history, his injury history, and then their history of doing contracts and go, that's not the way we do business.
It's extremely creative the way the Bengals set up their contracts because it protects them. It protects them. It says, hey, the guarantees are going to be front loaded. And if you fall off a cliff or if you get hurt or whatever the case would be, we can move on. Sucks to be you. Right? Sorry about it. And the players are like, well, I want more guaranteed money beyond just year one. Let's do guarantees in year one and year two. Like who's to say Trey? I don't see this happening. Who's to say Trey Hendrickson doesn't go from 17.5 sacks this year to 6 next year? And then it's like,
especially when it comes to sacks, which can be random at times anyways. That's
right. Yeah. And hear me out. I think that, but I think this is where the Bengals kind of put themselves in a rock and a hard place because of how recent, because let's talk about it. The track that Trey Hendrickson is on right now, if he were to play in Cincinnati for the next 3 seasons, don't quote me on this. Let me do a little bit of math, right? Let me do a little math real quick. He, in the next 3 years, if he played in Cincinnati, the next 3 years, he would break the Bengals. And in the numbers he's put up, he would break the Bengals all-time sack record that is currently held by Carlos Dunlap.
What's Carlos at?
83.
And
82.
Trey's at
82. Trey right now is at 57.
Okay.
That he's 26 away from doing that.
So 3 year, that's 8. That's 10, 9.
That's 8. That's 8. Basically, let's call it 9. 9 sacks. Right? The numbers that he's putting up currently are ridiculous.
Yep.
And I think getting him edge rusher help would only improve his chances of doing that. And I keep going back to how it's gone the last few years with guys like DJ Reader or Jesse Bates. I feel like Trey Hendrickson is the one guy that is undeniable. He's undeniable. The numbers he's put up have been undeniable. Being the only consistent pass rusher has been undeniable. Right now, if you were to put Trey Hendrickson on the trade block and you were to say, hey, we are going to trade the NFL sack leader, let me just say that heavy on it when I mention Trey Hendrickson, because I feel like with Myles Garrett or with TJ Watt, we scream that from the mountaintop. If I was to put the leading NFL sack leader on the trade block, what could that get the Bengals? Because my point is not to trade Trey, because I don't want to do that. My point is he's valued around the league. He's valued. Yeah. He's a hot commodity, an all-pro sack leader, in the running for defensive player of the year. Consistent. Trey Hendrickson is a guy that the Bengals respectfully I have not seen a guy like that come through the doors from an edge rusher standpoint since I've been watching Bengals football. I have not seen that. The only other defensive lineman, now I'm talking about defensive lineman here, that I've seen that has put together efforts week in and week out. They could be a game wrecker. Geno Atkins.
Mm-hmm.
He's the only other guy that I saw do that. But from an edge rusher standpoint, we have not seen any pass rusher quite like Trey Hendrickson in Cincinnati. So that all being said, the numbers that he has put up, the consistency in which he's done it, and how, honestly, he handled the contract situation very similar to the way Jamar Chase handled his contract situation. Well, you don't think I'm worth it, or you're not ready to come to terms with what I'm asking for? Let me have a record-breaking year. Let me put together numbers that are undeniable. Now, usually I would be of the belief that, maybe he might fall off a cliff. Trey Hendrickson has showed no signs of slowing down. His hand fighting is incredible. I encourage everyone, if you get an opportunity, to turn on the tape and watch Trey Hendrickson rush the passer. He has these offensive tackles in a blender. The one thing for me is the next evolution of Trey Hendrickson's game is, hey, let's move him around along the defensive line like they do some of these other elite pass rushers. Could he do it? I don't know. But I think Trey Hendrickson is a game wrecker. I think Trey Hendrickson is a game changer. And right now, when you look at the face of the Bengals defense, who else is doing that? Who else is a game changer? I don't want to hear the word potential. I don't want to hear the word intangibles. I don't want to hear that this player could grow into that potentially. I'm talking about right now as it stands today. You take Trey Hendrickson off the Bengals, there's no impact player on the defensive side of the ball. Respectfully.
Not even close.
Not even close. That all being said, to address Duke Tobin's comments, I don't have a problem with what Duke said, really, respectfully. I just wish he just didn't say anything.
Yeah, the one time he talks.
Because you left something up for interpretation. Like for me, Trey Hendrickson, we are going to do everything in our power to bring Trey Hendrickson back. Not, we have a number in mind and, potentially we'll see what happens. Because let's face it, Duke Tobin's not cutting the deals. He's not. So the uproar, the anger, the angst, the people that are irate with Duke Tobin, save it. It's fine. Like, Duke's not in control of that. I just want to see more. And this goes from the Bengals organization from the top down. I just wish we saw more loyalty, more support, more like we're hammering the table. This is a guy that we love. This is a guy that we are going to keep. Did you hear how Andrew Berry came out and talked about Myles Garrett?
Yeah.
Myles Garrett will be a Brown. Like, no, it's not up for debate. He is a game changer. He's a game wrecker. He's someone that we love. He is someone that we are going to build That's the way. That's the way I'd like to hear the Bengals organization throw their support behind Trey Hendrickson. That's what I like to hear the Bengals say. Outside of that, I don't care what Duke Tobin had to say, honestly, too much about it, because it's neither here nor there. But I hope that Trey Hendrickson is a bigger priority, and we're not looking at we could do this maybe, or we could do that maybe. Trey Hendrickson's a guy that I think the Bengals should do everything in their power, leave no stone unturned, to make sure they bring that guy back. That's just my thoughts on it. That's all I got to say about that. Hopefully Trey Hendrickson is a Bengal long-term. Hopefully he retires a Bengal. Wouldn't it be nice to see a guy retire a Bengal? Yeah. This stupid rule of, when a guy turns 30, some people say when you're 30, you're still in your prime. Shit, if you think a guy turning 30 is washed, what are me and Evan?
Sure.
What are me and Evan coming up this year? I don't know, man. I think listen, Evans.
I'm already 30. Yeah,
you're not.
Clock in my eyes.
Well, I'm turning that in September. But I listen, I'd like to think that I'm just entering my prime.
I'll tell you what, how my knees feel like, yeah, nah, you should be worried if I was playing defensive end for anybody right now. I'll tell you that.
God. But man, listen, that guy is just so basically what we're saying is all 30-year-olds are not created equal.
Yeah.
Basically.
All knees are not created equal. Let's put it that way.
Oh my God. But yeah, that's all I got to say regarding that. Listen, guys, one thing I want to touch on really quickly is I want to go over, one free agent target that you guys are enamored with, or one guy that you think that you'd like for the Bengals to sign, and why. Daniel, I know you've been kind of like touching on free agency a little bit. You've been touching on some of these NFL draft prospects, and you and me have been watching a lot of film lately. Who's a guy in free agency that you're looking at that you'd like to see the Bengals sign, and why?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna steal your guy. You already did a video on him, but listen, there's a couple guys that I can touch on.
Chris Zito, we do not care, respectfully, too. I'm just sorry. It's been a while since we've seen you in the chat, too, brother. But it's amazing that you guys are headed to a Super Bowl. You can't find anything better to do on a Wednesday night besides find a Bengals live show and talk about how great you guys are at hoisting Lombardi. For that, I hope the Eagles beat the fuck out of you guys. Yeah. That's what I hope. So fuck you and the Kansas City Chiefs fan base. That's the reaction you want me to say? Sure, you get that. Dan, go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm looking at the defensive line, and I think that Baron Browning is the perfect guy for the Cincinnati Bengals. There is a specific spot that you can look at as a pass rusher, and there's some guys in the draft that we like, obviously the Josiah Stewarts of the world, but this is a guy that you're getting two main things for, right? You're getting the youth, dude is 25 turning 26, and you're getting the pure pass rusher. This is a guy where you're probably going to get a discount on him because he switched teams, right? He got traded from the Broncos, not for his play, but because the Broncos have 3 to 4 young guys that they are rolling with the rest of, for the next 2 to 3 years. And Baron Browning is a guy, like I said, a pure pass rusher. Out of college, he was, a linebacker and kind of doing pretty much everything. And he fits the role for what I think. You're not going to have to pay more than $8 million at most, I believe. A year, I would probably say $5 to $8 million, maybe do a 1 to 2 year, prove it deal. And you get a guy that can play 300, 400, 500 snaps and just be a pure pass rusher that I think the Cincinnati Bengals truly need. Whether that's, hey, you kick Miles Murphy inside, or you have Joseph Osai, you re-sign him, kick him inside, or you have those guys on, run heavy downs. Baron Browning, 250, 260 pounds, super light, flies around the edge. He is a pure pass rusher that, regardless of what you project to do in the draft, you cover your ass and say, hey, we at least added to the pass rush in free agency. So now in the draft, if we don't like one of the edges in round 1, we can go offensive line, we can go cornerback, we can go, any best player available, but we're not forced to go and get a pure pass rusher in round 1. So I think that Baron Browning fits because he's not necessarily he's not a lock to go back to Arizona. So he's a free agent. He's not a lock to go to a specific place. I think if the Bengals made a pitch to him, I would be very strongly, for him. And I think that he would probably sign with Cincinnati Bengals if they made the pitch to him.
All I'm going to say is his dad retweeted my tweet. His dad liked my tweet. Baron Browning to Cincinnati would help feed the defensive line. That's what I would say. Logan, your thoughts?
Yeah, there's two guys I was going back and forth between talking about a little bit. The guy I'm going to go into a little bit is Malcolm Kuntz from the Raiders. Unfortunately, Malcolm did not play in 2024.
What'd you say?
Unfortunately, Malcolm did not play in 2024. Got hurt in the last preseason game or in practice. I forget what it was. But there was clearly something that happened in the back half of 2023 that kind of just flipped a switch for him. From week 9 on, 8 sacks, 23 hurries. It's just pure dominance to me. That's one of the best stretches of football from any defensive players through that time, especially at the edge position. He's a little bit lighter, fits that kind of more of that pure pass rushing upside. Again, you're probably going to be able to get him at a little bit cheaper coming off an injury.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little bit different style, but he's a guy that just gets to the quarterback. He's a guy that if you can get him on a shorter term, cheaper deal, and he gives you that production of 2023, that back half of the year, you're reaping so many benefits, especially at the price point that he's probably going to be had. Still just 26 years old. Obviously, coming off the injury isn't the best thing, but I feel like when you kind of factor in the contract, the production that we saw the last time he played, the upside to it. There's not too many combinations of cheap production potential, like everything, that kind of ties in. Just unfortunately, it's just the injury kind of holding that back. But again, that could be a good thing, driving the price point down. But again, the Bengals just need pass rush help so bad. And he's, like Daniel said, he's a guy that's not going to stop you from drafting anybody else. He's not going to be a guy that, stops you from adding to the room. He's giving you I don't want to say upside because I don't want to act like he hasn't done it before, but he's coming off a dominant stretch the last time he played football. And if he can give you that production, or even just a little bit less than that production, he will more than return his value.
So I talked a little bit earlier about, Javon Holland would be a great ad, but obviously top free agent safety would be a great ad for him. I don't think realistically that they play in those financial waters. But talked about Dre Greenlaw, talked about why I thought he would be a good fit. Another guy that I do like if they opt for, again, corner. You have so many guys on rookie contracts already that are on first contracts still. It feels like too early to cut bait on them or to really relinquish or put one of them on the bench and just say you're not going to play, because I feel like you still don't have defined roles or know exactly confidently what everybody is right now. So I see maybe an ad of like a Steven Nelson level corner, veteran corner for $5 or $6 million. Not very inspiring. But the guy I want to kind of highlight, if you're looking for a playmaker in a type of Al Golden defense, right? Someone who's going to be aggressive and going to be a playmaker, whether that's on the ball, at the point of attack. I'm looking at Trayvon Murray, who's just going to be turning 26 in this upcoming season. But in the last 2 seasons, he's got 5 interceptions and 18 passes defensed. And also has been pretty good as a blitzer, 3 sacks, 5 quarterback hits over the last 2 years as well. Was top 15 among all safeties in interceptions, forced incompletion rate, tackles for loss, and for defensive stops. It's pretty good company to be in. Not going to be terribly expensive, probably about, $5-6 million a year. You can swap him out with Geno Stone, get cheaper, get someone who has more proven ball production in back-to-back years, and feel good about where that ends up and takes you in the next couple of years as you figure out how this defense and this coaching staff, for that matter, are really going to shape up over the next couple of years.
I love that. Y'all are all cooking with some of the players you name. I got a guy that I was high on when he was coming out of the draft, and I'm high on him now. Milton Williams. Milton Williams.
Law Tech, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You want an opportunity to get a guy that it's funny. I just did. That's the, I don't want to, I don't want to get, that's the video we have dropping tomorrow, which is one of my next player profiles. We dived really, really deep into the numbers when it comes to a Milton Williams. You know what? Screw it. Let's talk about it now. I have in here. So the one issue that you're going to have with a guy like Milton Williams, so his numbers really, really jumped off the charts this past season, right? His run defense left a little bit desired. This is some of his grades from PFF. His run defense grade was a 41.7. Finished 116 out of 140 eligible interior defensive linemen. His pass rush was insane, right? His grade was a 91. He really stepped up in a big way. You can kind of point to the last couple of years. You obviously had guys like Brandon Graham, so on and so forth in there. So it was kind of hard for him to kind of steal opportunities. But with the injury to Brandon Graham, Milton Williams saw himself get an increased role this year. It's funny that his run defense grade was better the last 2 seasons compared to what it was this year. He's projected right now, Ev, to get like a 3-year deal. About
7 a year. Yeah. I mean, for interior help, you're paying 10 for BJ Hill. You're paying 10 for Sheldon Rankins.
He's projected right now to get 21 a year. Okay. Milton is projected to get
21 per year or
21 per year, brother.
Oh yeah. You're right. I was like, I thought because one thing I'm sure you just talked about was he's played 30 to 50% of the snaps every season. So it's like,
that's just the Eagles though.
Yeah.
But
you end up with the Trey Hendrickson conversation, right? Of hey, literally, do you come in? It's literally
it's how much of it was he benefiting from playing next to a generational player in Jalen Carter, right?
On pass rushing down, on obvious snaps, coming on fresh,
right? Like Vic Fangio's defense, because One could also say Vic Fangio's defense brings the best out of players. We saw, a guy that Evan just talked about, Javon Holland. His numbers last year under Vic Fangio's defense was incredible. Vic Fangio leaves, goes to the Philadelphia Eagles. They get a new defensive coordinator in there. His numbers plummet. He looks like a completely different player. And so you have to ask yourself how much of it is the talent that is around him plus the coordinator versus is this who Milton Williams truly is? My take on it, I think Milton Williams is closer to the player that we saw this year than he's not. That's what I think. I think Milton Williams at his best could be this player that we saw this year. We saw 40 pressures from Milton Williams this year. And interior defensive line is a player that is a position the Bengals have targeted the last couple of all seasons. It is a position that the Bengals are willing to pay. That being said, you got to ask yourself, will Milton Williams carry over that same success he had in Philly over to wherever he go, whether that's Cincinnati or somewhere else? And that leaves a lot to be discussed, if you will. That's just my thought process on a Milton Williams. He's a guy that I really, really like because I think that him put together with Chris Jenkins. I love Chris Jenkins, by the way. We talk a lot about players who we need to add. I feel like we don't highlight enough good that we saw from players this year, albeit his PFF grades aren't going to jump off the charts to you, but I do think that there were some games this year in which Chris Jenkins showed a lot of positivity. I saw that I turned on the tape and you watch him versus Joe Bitonio. Wow. I mean, he really, maybe he just had his number. I don't know, but both games he looked really, really good against him, had really, really strong performances. I like to think Chris Jenkins is going to develop into a really good pro for us. We obviously know he started off very slow with the knee injury and stuff like that. And you also got to like what you saw from McKinley Jackson, especially in that Giants game, taking on 2 blocks, shedding those guys. I mean, being a disruptor, being a force. So I often kind of like ask myself this question when you're going throughout the draft process and you're going through free agency process. Do you think that those guys can develop into 2 high-end starters for the Bengals, meaning McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins Jr.? And if the answer is unequivocally, not a resounding yes, then you probably will look to add to that position. The thing is, I think what I saw from McKinley Jackson and Chris Jenkins leads me to believe that those guys can develop into 2 very good starters for the Bengals. So when we talk about adding players like a Milton Williams or Osa Odighizuwa to the defensive line, how much of that is going to stymie their growth or hurt their growth if they're not getting those snaps, those opportunities to prove what they're capable of. So, it's an ever-changing conversation. It's a conversation we're going to continue to have throughout the entire draft process. But for me, I like what I saw from Chris Jenkins this year. I think he has a lot of room to grow, But I think when we really pinpoint games, you saw a semblance of what he could potentially be.
Important to remember those 2 were both dealing with injuries early in the season too. And you already see a lot of rookies kind of struggle. And then around after the bye, that's when they start to kind of figure things out. Game slows down for them. They understand everything a little bit better. Like I do think you maybe saw a little bit of that, especially with those injuries early in the season and late in the offseason for McKinley Jackson, Chris Jenkins.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. And like I said, we'll
also
see.
We've got some defensive line coaches that are out that are not great developers of talent and skill and technique, but
who
I don't know. Maybe it's the same guys who.
Listen, man. All I know is that I hope that we see some development on from a pass rushing standpoint from a lot of these guys, because realistically, this defensive line could look a little gutted. I'm expecting the release of Sam Hubbard. Somebody actually asked earlier, and I don't want to make it seem like I ignored your question. Somebody said, "Do you think the Bengals should bring back Sam Hubbard at a discounted rate?"
If he's going to play edge 5 for $3 million a year for 2.5, like maybe, that's the thing is you're going to have to be
love
like,
Cincinnati, you're going to have to show me, bud.
Yeah. You're going to have to be a very
Skyline
team friendly deal.
I'm talking about Skyline type deal. We'll give you unlimited Skyline and a vet minimum.
That's the thing is he's going to have to take a lot less money to play with the Bengals, because there's no way that a team like the Bears, who are starting Andrew Billings, Andrew Billings right now on their D line, like that, they would pay a guy like Sam to just be like, hey, we need a veteran with a pulse to come in here for $8 million.
I think it's Cincinnati or bust for Sam. I don't know if he, I don't think he continues his playing career.
That's kind of where you're at, where it seems like it makes sense for everybody to just redo the deal, not restructure, just completely like you said. Yeah. void the contract,
1 year.
either release
1
and
year.
come back immediately on a new deal that you already have
He
worked
should be
out.
our Brandon Graham. That's what he should be.
Every just comes back on 1 year deals.
On
Like, hey,
1 year
you coming
deals.
back again? Yep. All right.
Borderline coach
Yeah.
type, you know.
Udonis Haslam. He just he just
oh my god.
eventually he just stops wearing pads and starts wearing polos, and then 1 year he's got the headset on, and the next thing you
Yeah.
don't know, he's the D-line
Yeah,
coach. and
literally.
you're
It's
like,
like, what
yeah.
the hell? How did this transition?
Yeah,
happen?
no.
And then,
Hey,
you know,
I respect it. Hey, don't hate on UD, man. UD's the way to go.
Listen, we're running out of time here, but I want to get to Senior Bowl targets that people are looking at. I'm gonna let you guys take this one away. Admittedly, I've been so up to my neck in, you know, preparing for the Super Bowl, us potentially getting a building, and so many other things.
A whole ass building, baby.
Whole ass building. Whole ass building.
All of it.
Even comes with bathrooms.
Literally. But Daniel, I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I'll get two guys in here real quick. For me, there's a lot of position we can talk about. We can talk about, you know, some of these corners, wide receivers. For me, it really is edge rusher. And it is really going to be the battle of, do the Bengals go the route that they're used to going? And I'm going to target two guys in specific. I think it is and it's not just these two guys in conversation, but Mike Green and Shamar Stewart. These are two guys I think are the epitome of the Bengals conversation. One guy, Mike Green, I'm a huge fan of, 6'3", 250. This dude is a pure pass rusher. We talk about swim moves. We talk about bend around the edge. We talk about a dude who led the nation in sacks. We talk about a dude who's just got the full package when it comes to a pass rusher. And he's strong in the run game, but specifically, you're getting the flats in the pass rush. Or Shamar Stewart. And that's, we're talking 6'6", 280 pounds, a guy who is a bulldozer in the run game, a guy who's got the length, who's got the size, but didn't necessarily, you know, put it all together when it came to, you know, a pure pass rusher. So for me, that's what I saw, you know, not just in the Senior Bowl, but those are the two guys everybody's talking about, Mike Green and Shamar Stewart. And I think that's where the Bengals conversation really should start is, hey, are we going to go with a pure pass rusher, James Pierce, Mike Green, or are we going to go our typical way, a guy who can play 3 downs, but, you know, and it's got the size, but hasn't, you know, really refined his pass rush. So that's kind of where the conversation starts. And both guys have had a very phenomenal, you know, time in the Senior Bowl. And I think both guys Mike Green may go above the Bengals, but I think that that's kind of the range for both of them. And I think both those guys will be available. Logan, real quick.
Yeah, I think for me, you know, first off, I want to say how, especially at the Senior Bowl, this tight end class is ridiculous. The tight end class at the Senior Bowl has been absolutely phenomenal. I know it's a little bit of an awkward position. I do think it's one we need to add. But for me, it's just been this offensive line, man. Gray Zabel's been phenomenal from North Dakota State for them. Jonah Savaina from Arizona. Jonah Savaina from Arizona.
Jonah Savaina. Jonah Savaina.
Right?
Just two guys that have moved around, that have played a bunch of different positions, working inside a guard now, and then just playing really good football. And I think we all know the importance of the guard position for the Cincinnati Bengals. Will it be one they address in the draft? Who knows?
Hell no.
But they're very, very, very good football players. And
Where would they be available? Would you say? Are they round 1 or round 2 guys?
They're round 2 guys for me. I mean, they're guards to me that have tackle experience, can even play a little bit of center. But just, you know, 2 guys that have very high upsides at guards that I would love in round 2.
Man, listen. No, you know what? You didn't go, right? You didn't.
For draft prospects, circle back. Hit me in a week or two.
I just got one guy that's on the tip of my tongue right now. Is a player that everybody loves, and that's Green. It's Mike Green, right? That's his name, Mike Green. Yep. Mike Green is an absolute beast, and when I look for a pass rusher, I want somebody with an unstoppable motor, a guy that's just consistent, guy wrecking, absolute, being a complete game wrecker. He's a guy that, you know, me and Daniel started watching a few weeks back, and actually Daniel actually put me on him a little bit. You know, the one, I guess, knock on him, if there's anything, is obviously I think he had a little bit of some character concerns, right? In transfer, but it seems like he's done a good job of rebuilding himself. And you know, you got to ask, are the Bengals on a spot to take a chance on a player that may have some questions about him? But I think if we're talking about production, I think the production has been off the charts for Mike Green, and I think the guy is gonna. I actually think he's gonna wind up playing him, you know, performing so well via his pro day, obviously at the Senior Bowl, at the combine. I think he's gonna wind up playing into a top 12 pick personally, and I think we're gonna be talking about the Bengals potentially having to trade up for this guy. And it's crazy. While we see his stock rise, we see other people kind of get quiet on people like James Pierce Jr. and other players that I'm like, why are those guys not being talked about?
He's so good.
Even how they were
You
talking
see the
about.
Drazon Newton
Yeah.
effect of like, oh, here
Yeah.
comes Byron Murphy with a super awesome combine, and
Yeah.
now suddenly Drazon Newton's fallen maybe a little bit farther than he
Yeah.
should. And like,
I
okay,
saw one mock draft the other day that James Pierce Jr. going to the last pick to the Kansas City
It's
Chiefs.
he won't make it that far.
That was
There's we'll
was
get
like-
into that later.
yeah.
Same thing with Michael Williams. That's the thing. I don't think the Bengals should, even as much as I like Mike Green,
Mhm.
I think it would be a failure to go out. I mean, maybe they do it, but there's so many edge rushers in this that I would really struggle to see them they should trade it, because if a guy like Mike Green goes top 10, then you're going to get one of the James Pierce, Michael Williams, Shamar Stewart's there available at 17.
Yeah, so I love Michael Williams. Me, we kind of see it a little different.
Crazy thing. Why don't we just draft edge players or defensive linemen who actually have pass rush techniques?
Yes, that would be nice, and they didn't just have a bull rush. That would be nice.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, not
But,
just, yeah.
I'm sure this is going to be a very, very interesting War Room episode. Somebody asked Malik, when's the War Room episode going to start back up? Well, those will probably start back up after the combine.
Mhm.
We'll have so much coverage and so much happening throughout this entire process. But just know, get ready for the arguments, get ready for the discussion, get ready for some people to leave fuming because Malik traded a goddamn second rounder for what? To back into the first round. I'm kidding.
You got the punching bag up there in the garage. We got to go leave mid show and bust out some
Literally,
steam real quick. We'll be all right.
Literally.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be some interesting conversations to be had on the War Room. But listen, that's all the time that we got. We appreciate you guys so much for making State of the Jungle a part of your Wednesday routine. Make sure you guys keep it locked to our social media channel. If you aren't here all the time, you should be. What are you doing? Make sure you give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content. We're going to have you guys covered for the entire Super Bowl week, right? Leading up to the big game. We'll be discussing it, having the conversation. And I'm looking forward to getting down to Louisiana and trying some gumbo. I've never been to Louisiana, so I'm pretty never been, man. So I'm pretty pumped up for it. And we'll see. We'll see if Malik doesn't, get lost somewhere at some point. But no, I promise I'll be careful. But we appreciate y'all so much for tuning in to another episode of State of the Jungle. And as always, until next time, who day?
That's all they ever do.